Good afternoon. I am Crystal Nicole Donovan, licensed social worker, consultant, and trainer, and I am here with Jessica Zavala. And we're going to just spend a few minutes talking about supported education on college campuses. We do have a few objectives and identify strategies to increase awareness and reduce stigma, identify opportunities that promote collaboration and connectedness, and recognize the cultural considerations and culturally responsive interventions for college students living with psychosis. So instead of simply reading a bio, I thought I would have, or we will have, Jessica introduce herself, and then she is going to tell us more about the Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health.
Yes, hello and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all can hear me. And so thank you again, Nick and Christo for the invite to be here. And I look forward to having this discussion today. And so I'll provide a brief background about myself and we will continue on. But my background is in community behavioral health. I spent a few years in the outpatient setting, both here in Ohio and then actually out west. Out west, I worked at a very large child service system, the child and family team lead. And I like to share with people that in a sense, I feel as though this field of work chose me. It has really become a personal passion to ensure that youth and young adults, and now more specifically college students, are connected to services and supports. I have been here at NEOMED for 6 years, and it has been my pleasure to serve in the role of director of the Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health for the past couple of years, working and serving alongside campus and community partners in our endeavors as a coordinating center of excellence, which I'll talk about also more here in a moment. And then just as a side note, I actually started off in a small role for the MAT Echo. And so that was many moons ago. And so it seems today that things have come full circle.
So thank you, Jessica. I always just enjoy hearing people introduce themselves because they always give us those little nuggets, opposed to just reading a bio. So thank you so much. And just appreciate, what you said about, your passion and having that outpatient health background. We really see that showing up in your work. And so I am essentially going to ask some questions, and then Jessica is going to respond to those questions or statements. So, Jessica, can you please tell the FEP ECHO community more about Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health and the programs you offer across the state?
Sure, absolutely. So we're a coordinating center of excellence, as I mentioned earlier, and we serve really in a role as a resource dissemination center. Our mission is to promote mental health awareness, wellness, and suicide prevention. Krista, I'll also say in regards to the importance of our work across the state, the Healthy Minds Network, if you all are familiar with some of the reports and data that they release, recently released their 2023-24 faculty report. And what's of significance is that this report actually shows some promising data regarding mental health at college campuses across the country, specifically with anxiety and depression. But anecdotally, we are still hearing that there is an increased need for student services from counseling centers and our folks that we work with at universities. There are about 19 million undergraduate students here in the U.S. We know that 54% contemplate suicide. About 1,100 will go on to complete suicide. Many more attempt. And we also know about 62% never seek treatment or services. So the fact does remain that suicide is the second leading cause of death for college students, which makes our work even more vital and important as a coordinating center of excellence. And I did see a previous slide. I don't know if you wanted me to expand a little bit, Crystal, on our staff here, but I can pause.
Yes, please.
Yes. So just to provide a brief background, additionally about our staff and our center, and what a great picture that's shared here. We, as a team, we took this during National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And of course, I've included who's new to our team, our Suicide Prevention Health Promotion Manager, our Program Dissemination Coordinator. In addition, we have a couple consultants, and we'll welcome to mental health assistance at the top of the year. But we've experienced tremendous growth over the past couple years. I didn't mention previously, but we got our start back in 2011 after the unfortunate Virginia Tech tragedy, and we received some funding from the state to train campus security and law enforcement officers in CIT. We also received the Garrett Lee Smith Suicide Prevention Grant. That is a federal grant via SAMHSA, which laid the path for us to provide funding for our many grants. And so the subsequent year, we were able to form an advisory. We had also did some collaborations, again, with the Healthy Minds Network, the JET Foundation, and PEGS Foundation, working with a cross collaboration of campuses with survey data and convenings. 2019, we really began to expand our learning opportunities for campuses. And then on till today, where we are currently with the staff that you see here, we continue to offer these educational and training opportunities, technical assistance as well.
Thank you, Jessica. Do you want to move to the next slide?
Yes, next slide, please. All right, and so also just to expand on the tenets to our programming, education and training, as I mentioned, we of course provide those opportunities for campus community partners. We offer a webinar series. What's important about this webinar series is that these are topics that are selected by campuses. So we do survey them. They're the boots on the ground, if you will. And we really want to offer topics that are related to the trends, challenges, and barriers with mental health and higher education that they are experiencing. So we really, really do take our time to hear from our partners. We also do convene our partners every 2 years for a biennial conference, and save the date, if you will, for our 7th biennial conference, which will be coming up May 15th in Columbus. And of course, I can provide some follow-up information. Also, technical assistance. We have been tapped by the Ohio Department of Higher Education, as well as Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, to partner with a number of organizations to support some targeted or prioritized projects for campuses. And last but not least is our campus community grants. And Crystal, if you'll go on to the next slide, I can provide some background about that. So really the purpose of our campus community grants, they're to encourage and to promote collaboration between colleges, universities, and a community partner. And an example of a community partner might be NAMI, could be an Adamsport, or essentially an organization that provides mental health first aid or QPR or trainings. And so we encourage the partnerships to develop programming, of course, to prevent suicide, promote mental health, and reduce stigma about mental illness or treatment on campuses. Let me just add to, when it comes to our grants and really leveraging campus community collaborations, that's really essential to our role as a resource dissemination center. And it also solidifies that campus communities have a diverse set of needs. And I'll say it's just vital really to tap into both campus and communities to identify from them what is the best strategies to improve and maintain these relationships, as we also understand that students have a voice and choice in terms of where they want to receive support and services from. Overall, the gist of these grants is really, again, to leverage the impact of local mental health systems, public health expertise, and of course, knowledge and resources to improve trainings and technical assistance. And Crystal, with that being said, I think we can move on to the next slide. All right.
I realized that essentially we were saying, talking about the campus community grants. A lot of that information was on the previous slide, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to add more information before we go to our next question.
Yeah, if you want to go to the next question, I can add it. I was going to talk a bit more about the collaboration and some examples here.
Yes, that'd be
Yeah, sure. So we have funded over 100 plus institutions, so in about 43 out of Ohio's 88 counties. We remain truly amazed at the partnerships, collaborations, and the opportunities that are provided for not only students, but staff and faculty via these mini grants. And so, for example, Wayne Holmes Mental Health Board, and then for Stark County Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health. What's unique about child and adolescent behavioral health is that they collaborate with all 5 campuses to provide a stigma reduction, information campaign. And now they've even incorporated a hospital partner. So again, we're seeing just some unique collaborations and partnerships coming about with these campus community grants. Also for Hamilton, so we have the some things that are happening within that particular county. University of Toledo, Coshocton, so the Ohio State Athens, and then within Columbus, some other kind of grantee related events. Lastly, I'll mention NAMI Southwest. They do a really amazing job of incorporating students to provide some of the trainings. So, of course, we know students learn and are definitely adaptable to hearing from peers. And so there's a in our own words training that they've been able to provide to a number of college campuses there within their geographical area.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you identifying some of those campuses, but as well as organizations across the state. And I know that's something that we talked about. We really wanted to stress your range, right? And so even though we are currently sitting in Northeast Ohio, to be able to show how you've been able to work and support campuses as well as organizations across the state of Ohio. Question. Literature highlights that early detection, awareness, and stigma reduction events can be useful in supporting students living with psychosis in higher education. Can you give us some more examples of early detection, awareness, and stigma reduction campaigns developed by past grantees?
Yeah, Crystal, and what a great question. And I could think of a few examples to share. Um, but you mentioned early intervention, early detection, and what I'll say about that is that it avoids the message that once a student has received help or a referral has been made that someone's work is done, right? It really is a balanced approach, and it's a very likely possibility that students are going to need ongoing encouragement and support. So it's not just a referral once and done, but that early intervention, that early detection is key, right? And I noticed that you have the next slide up, which is the toolkit. And this is an excellent example I would share and recommend. It's a back to school toolkit for higher education specifically. And so there's some great informational orientation within the first few pages, I believe pages 2 through 6. And then also a section on awareness and challenge and stigma. There's also a lot of relevant information on that page as well. And so resources are also key in awareness, I'll say.
Yes, and we before we move to the next slide, this back to school toolkit has a wealth of information, and so it is highlighted under our references, and then also for our audience to know that the Healthy Mind study that Jessica did mention earlier, that is also going to be listed under your resources.
All right. Well, I guess I will continue on with, increasing awareness and stigma reduction. And let me just say this, that unfortunately, commonly heard and held views of schizophrenia, students who have this diagnosis are often inaccurate, stigmatizing, and excessively negative. And so when it comes to increasing awareness and stigma reduction, here's just a couple of things that I think is important to share. One is promote affirming attitudes about students with psychosis. Of course, to reduce that stigma and to combat any misconceptions, whether it's other students, peers, faculty, and staff that they may have. Secondly, is build faculty and staff capacity, and that's really just to provide, again, that ongoing support and encouragement. So I mentioned that earlier, how important it is for that support to be needed. It's not just not a once and done referral. And then also connection to accommodation offices and resources. And lastly, what I'll mention is champions. So many of you may have champions in your work, the things that you're doing now, projects. But I'll say regarding champions for this specific work, it may not be someone who has a mental health background. It very well could be student affairs or someone within a position that may not exactly seem to correlate with the work.
Yes, I think I appreciate you talking about the champion on campus because even for me, like talking to you about how that person might not be part of the counseling center, might not have that mental health background, but is that someone that the coordinating specialty care teams that can be a contact person and someone that could assist with maybe those connections and those referrals also, um, which I know you'll talk more about that as we move towards opportunities for collaboration.
Yes, absolutely, Crystal. And let me just kind of respond to that very quickly. And thinking about other champions, it could be a student that's a champion as well. And again, the student may actually even go to someone else versus directly going to the counseling center first and or referral. Just could come through various different ways. So yes, I agree. Champions are vital in this work. So some additional opportunities for collaboration, orientation. And so I know that's going to look different at each university, but campus counseling centers, of course, awareness events, providing the opportunities for connections and linkages, of course, to early intervention. And as I spoke about child and adolescent behavioral health, providing those trainings or other information events that allows for resources and various different information to be available for the community as well as other students. Also, to inviting speakers or individuals to campus with shared lived experience. This is proven, I think, in a number of our grants. So many I can't really even list. Hosting individuals who have the diagnoses and who have also experienced psychosis certainly can be effective to combat stereotypes and discrimination, which I know we'll talk about here in a bit, also to dispel myths and reduce stigma. So essentially, we know that receiving the right treatments and supports um, can and eventually does make the difference. And let me also add this particular piece about inviting individuals with lived experience and specifically students. This can help answer some questions for other students who are considering going along the path of higher education. For example, how difficult is it to be at this school or campus, right? Does it foster a sense of belonging? And last but not least, it can answer the question regarding the campus culture.
That is so important, that campus culture. So yes, to be able to just be able to ask some honest questions, and to be able to get some of that, honest feedback as well. And I think that's a good, segue as we just talk briefly about cultural considerations. Jessica had mentioned, just like the range of students on campus and individuals coming from diverse backgrounds. And so we want to recognize that there are going to be individuals that are on campus, students on campus, living with psychosis, but also experiencing financial stress, also experiencing food insecurity. So some of issues that they may have experienced in the community, also experiencing them on campus. In this particular, and their colleagues are specifically looking at Black college students, but this would also, apply to think our Latinx, LGBTQ, our first generation college students. And there is some research that is showing, and their colleagues, they were part of a study, and they were looking at, how does financial stress, food insecurity, and discrimination impact um, psychosis, or one, developing psychosis. And it's an association, so I want to stress that it's not causation, but it was pretty high. We're looking at almost 82%. And so Jessica talk a little bit more in the next couple of slides, but just want to keep that in front of us as, we're looking at, okay, this person living with psychosis, we got them, they're in school, even if they're living on campus, but also want to recognize some of the other challenges that they might experience. And then also with discrimination, unfortunately, individuals have talked about, discrimination that they have experienced in their communities, as well as on those higher education campuses. And so just want to be aware of that and the many layers of individuals that living with psychosis, but also want to attend university, also want to attend their local college. And so it made me think about some of those core components of coordinated specialty care, and they're all important. But a few that stood out was that case management. So looking at that case manager on the team that could connect that student to some resources in the community. But again, if the case manager of the team is familiar with the campus, thinking about those champions that we mentioned earlier and having some of those contacts that could make the connections in regards to a food pantry, for example. Again, the supported education specialist, that person can still support that student. So maybe the student wants to get a job on campus, but also we know students typically do not just stay on campus, right? They're exploring their community. And so the supported education specialist can also assist them with employment opportunities in the community. And many of our teams also have peer support specialists as well as nursing. And so we've talked about that lived experience and how valuable that is. And this really could be an opportunity for a connection and building a relationship with a peer support specialist on the team. As we're thinking about cultural responsiveness, as coordinated specialty care teams work to create safe and affirming environments, can you identify examples of how the team was able to weave culturally responsiveness into an event or an initiative?
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. First, let me say a couple of things just regarding the importance of culturally relevant services and supports at institutions of higher education generally. One, loneliness for students of color is significant, particularly if they don't have the spaces, or the social skills to build relationships. It could be as though they're living those 4 years in isolation. And also adding a caveat that that's just not students, but it's also faculty and staff. So really cultivating belonging and happiness for everyone. You're looking at events, right? You want to know how we are weaving this into um, the importance of what we do, but it has to be really included for everyone, including how events are planned and even orchestrated. Also, some students are coming in already, as you mentioned, Crystal, looking at those social determinants of health. They're matriculating to college already with these challenges and diagnosis. And we're in environments where they felt supported previously, perhaps they're not supported. And so the potential of imposter syndrome or others, also that feeling of belonging, again, that's just really, really important for everyone. And so what we've really worked to do to weave into the fabric of campus safety events and initiatives is we really encourage those cultural factors from all care members, right? And we're not a direct service center, but the organizations that we work with that do, we really encourage them to establish those relationships with faith leaders or other community leaders to increase the understanding of the population that they're serving, what matters to them, what's important to them. Also establish a relationship with those communities that have been historically oppressed to provide, that holistic perspective and not just a one-sided or a different perspective. That includes consultation and involving peers or experts as well. We've talked a bit about peers from those marginalized communities that identify and can recognize trauma in oppressed communities for students enrolled at particular institutions.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica. I think this could be its own didactic.
Yes.
But everyone, again, as always, you will receive the slides after our presentation. And so just kind of thinking about again, how we can best support students on campus.
Yeah, I agree, Crystal. And there's so much more that I can add on that, but certainly no time is of the essence.
And just wanted to present this again, just to show our attendees the range of your grantees. So I don't know if you wanted to add just a little information or any comments about this map.
Yeah, Crystal, I can expand just a little bit on University of Toledo, and I think I briefly mentioned their county earlier, but they have worked to develop what's known as the STAR program to address individuals at high risk for suicide. Also collaborated with a YWCA, so that's their community organization, for a tabling event to increase help-seeking behaviors for student leaders. And so residents, live, international BIPOC students were really highly encouraged to participate in that particular event. And then for Ohio State University, they partner with Hocking College along with their Suicide Prevention Coalition to provide community training and awareness event. Again, I can go on with a full list, but we have just seen some really amazing work being done here across the state by the Campus Community Collaborative grantees.
Thank you, Jessica. Just I think about, our programs again that we have in coordinate specialty care programs across the state of Ohio. So we just wanted to show everyone this map. So just that you can see that there's opportunity, regardless of where you are in the state. And then I just have one last question. If the community wants to learn more about Ohio program for campus safety and mental health, how can they find you?
Yes, Crystal, that's a great question. Of course, you see contact information for how to find us. But we are on social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to us. There is a lot of content and information as well as resources provided on our website as well.
Yes, you are on the socials, which I think, again, we're talking about, students on higher education campuses. And so we want to make sure that all of us, we stay relevant and we're able to, meet people where they are. So I do appreciate when I see organizations making those and programs making those efforts. Thank you, Jessica, so much for being with us this afternoon. I've learned a lot. And I hope our attendees have as well. And again, we do have those resources available to everyone at the end of the presentation. And just the last thing I wanted to present to you before we move forward. Toni Morrison from Lorain, Ohio. Anytime I have the opportunity to talk about her, I will. And this is one of my favorite quotes. I told my students, when you get those jobs that have been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. Thank you. And this concludes our didactic this afternoon.